News 8 at 11 with Phil Sanchez.
And welcome back. In tonight's Unfiltered conversation, Andrew Luck back in the news once again. The former Colts quarterback stunned the football world when he walked away from the game at the age of 30. Everyone knows that story. Now he's the focus of a brand new podcast that just dropped today. And joining us now is Wish TV Colts insider Zach Kiefer. Zach, good to see you. Can't wait to listen to this thing. It dropped today, already getting rave reviews. What can fans expect to hear when they listen?
Yeah, and I know this is hard for probably a lot of Colts fans. A lot of them aren't ready, even though it's been 3 years. But, given some time away from it, I feel like it's one of the more interesting stories we've had in the NFL in the last 15, 20 years. It's messy. It's incomplete. It stirs a lot of emotions. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a retirement quite like his. The way it happened, when it happened, how it all unfolded that night. Most surreal night of my career, for sure. And so I dug in with everybody I could find, including the subject himself. Andrew did not talk on the record, but, I talked to his college coach, the quarterback he took the job of at Stanford, Tony Dungy, Bill Polian, Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, Jim Irsay, DeQuell Jackson, his teammates in Indianapolis, RG3, the quarterback he dueled for the Heisman. Some unbelievable stories. And my takeaway at the end was, I really thought I knew the Andrew Luck story. I really thought I lived it, right?
Right.
I was wrong. I didn't know everything that happened. And some of the stories, some of these interviews, revealed to me were just eye-opening. Some of them make you laugh, and some of them are pretty hard to hear.
Without giving too much away, obviously, we want people to listen to the entire six-part series. What did surprise you? What did you learn that you didn't know before?
Well, for starters, I'll go back to even to high school. Andrew was this good quarterback in Texas. He wasn't a superstar. He wasn't heavily recruited. But after he signed with Stanford, Jim Harbaugh, the coach at the time, over-recruited him and was trying to get RG3 to sign there. So imagine that quarterback room at Stanford in 2010 and 11. I mean, you got the two best quarterbacks in the country. Does one of them transfer? Where do they go? How does that change the Heisman race in 2011 and the NFL draft in 2012? So that's a crazy what if.
Right.
And then secondly, I asked David Shaw, who's the coach at Stanford now and is really close with Andrew to this day, did the Colts build around him the right way? And David Shaw's been a coach for 20 years, and he was silent for a couple seconds. And he said, Zach, that's the most loaded question I've ever been asked in my life.
Right.
And then he answered, and he gave some pretty private frustrations that Luck had shared to him during those years, 2015, 2016, just about some of the decisions the Colts made and some of the moves that didn't necessarily help the quarterback.
How much of the retirement is the retirement a huge part of this?
Yeah, it's certainly part of his story, right? It's impossible to think about Andrew Luck without thinking about August 24th of 2019. It was such a surreal night. But no, it's not the podcast. It's not the entire story. I think there's a lot more to it, and we don't get to that really until episode 6. There's so much more to Andrew Luck, the human, the person, the football player, and his story than just the way he walked away from the game. Now, it's important to understand him, to understand why he walked away, but I don't want people to think it's just reliving that night, because I don't think Colts fans really want to do that.
What made you want to do the podcast now, 3 years after he retired?
Yeah, it wasn't my idea. Our narrative podcast editor came to me and threw it out. And at first I said no. I lived that, man. It was exhausting. I had files on my computer about labrum surgeries in your shoulder that were 65,000 words long. And I didn't want to dig that back up. I didn't want to go back to that. And so much has happened with the Colts, but there's so much of his career that feels incomplete. There's so much of his story that feels unfinished. And no, he's not going to come back and play, but I do feel like his story got lost in the monotony and the robotic nature of the NFL, right? Players retire and they move on, and the league just goes on. It always happens that way, but his story deserved another look. It was just too fascinating. And
it trends every time you mention him. I mean, it's just it's amazing how after 3 years, how much people are interested in who he is as a person. So I'm really looking forward to digging in and listening to this thing. How can folks, I have 30 seconds left, how can they find the podcast and where?
Yeah, it's super easy. You can find it on the Athletic Football Show podcast feed, anywhere you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and you can listen ad-free on the Athletic app. So super easy to find. Just look Luck in podcast, and you'll find your place.
Excellent. Zach, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks, Phil.